Almost immediately after news spread that 17-year-old Samantha Heller had been killed in a crash and that her abusive boyfriend Ben Klinger was driving, everyone who knew the girl jumped to the same conclusion.
I knew right away that it wasn't an accident.
And Samantha's loved ones were telling investigators much the same.
One friend actually described it as her life was a living hell. He basically made her feel worthless every day of her life. In his phone contacts, she's listed as dumb Heller. That's who would come up. On his contacts, it would come up, dumb Heller, which is awful to say, but that's what he thought of her.
And then there were Ben's lies. Shortly after the wreck, Klinger reportedly told a nurse at the hospital, quote, "I feel guilty. I told her she could lay down in the back seat without a seatbelt on, and she was pregnant with my child, and now she's dead."
He said she was in the back seat. We could prove she wasn't. You can see the impact, head impact here.
And for Ben's claims that he was thrown from the wreck and onto Samantha,
you knew he was lying.
We could prove he was 100% lying. We know he had a seatbelt on because he had the bruises on it, and here, consistent with it. But when you're ejected, the seatbelt's ripped, or it's ripped out of the casing or anything like that. There was absolutely no damage to the seatbelt consistent with ejection. And the other thing the reconstructionists were able to tell us was there's no way that the driver would, under this head-on collision with the guardrail, would be ejected 90 degrees to his right through the passenger side vehicle and land up over her, sitting on top of her.
Meaning that to end up on Samantha, Ben had to actually unbuckle his seatbelt after the crash and walk around to the other side of the car.
When you think about what Sammy had to go through that night.
It's horrible. It's horrible. She crawled out of the car. He got out of his side, walked around the front of the car, and sat on top of her.
It's almost too much to bear to even think about her crawling out of that vehicle and having a second chance at life. She was so close.
She was, but he wasn't gonna let it happen. He wasn't gonna let it happen.
And after weeks of collecting evidence, prosecutors were ready to make that case.
He was charged with criminal homicide for the death of Samantha.
But what was it that authorities say finally pushed Ben over the edge? District Attorney Craig Stedman says, take your pick.
It's a crescendo of motives that are coming together at this period of time that lead to the murder. I mean, you've got the unwanted pregnancy that he thinks is happening. You've got her charges, so he's mad at that. Plus, one of the other things that we found out later was he actually had another girl that he was seeing who he actually said at the hospital something to the effect of, well, at least we don't have to worry about her getting in between you and I in the future.
It is only later that investigators learned Samantha wasn't pregnant after all. But Ben didn't know that at the time, and according to his arrest affidavit, he was either angry because he was going to be a father, or jealous because he thought it was someone else's baby. Either way, prosecutors believe they have him dead to rights.
We felt we had a very, very strong case for first-degree murder. We could prove that he was lying about what took place. Him at the hospital telling his girlfriend that now we can be together. We had all that stuff of the pregnancy.
And the former threats.
And the former threats, I mean, threats, not just threats, but threats to kill her by driving a car off the road. He did exactly what he said he was going to do multiple times to her.
But as it turns out, the case would never go to trial.
We felt we had a mountain of evidence for first degree. But when you have these cases, it's not just about what you can prove, it's about dealing with the surviving victims and the family members.
And for Sandra's mom, pursuing the first-degree murder charges would mean reliving the unimaginable.
I don't think that you can underestimate how difficult this particular trial would have been on the family members. Just her manner of death, all that stuff, we would have had to go into great detail. Injury, broken bone after broken bone, how she was begging for her life.
So when attorneys worked out a deal that would avoid a trial in exchange for Klinger pleading guilty to third-degree murder with a minimum sentence of close to 30 years.
I was tired. I just wanted to go home and grieve. And so I made a choice to allow him to have that plea deal.
First degree was off the table, but Ben was off the streets.
What was he sentenced to?
It was 28 to 56 years. Personally, I was like, this guy deserves first degree and the rest of his life in jail. But it's easy for me to say because I'm not the family. They're the ones that have to live with this.
As part of his deal, Benjamin Klinger also pleads guilty to several other charges, including sending explicit photos of his underage girlfriend to friends. At sentencing, he's given the chance to address Samantha's family, saying, quote, "I accept full responsibility for the loss of a very special person. I want you to know with all my heart, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." In response, Lancaster County Judge Margaret Miller delivers the following statement, quote, "Today is the first day I've seen any degree of humanity or emotion in you. There is no doubt in my mind you lived your life with a callousness, arrogance, and a cowardliness, because being a bully is a coward."
The judge had some choice words that I rarely see handling the issues that were raised by the defense.
After that, 21-year-old Benjamin Klinger is taken away to serve out his 28 to 56-year sentence. End of story? Not exactly.
What happened in the post-conviction hearing?
Well, the guy pled guilty. This wasn't a trial where he went down saying, I didn't do this, you got the wrong guy, I'm innocent, I was framed. He admitted in court to the judge that he did these things that I've described. And he took the benefit of the bargain, and now he wants a do-over.
Coming up,
Was justice served for Samantha?
No.
an appeal that has Samantha's family screaming mad.
I will fight this, and I will sit through a trial.
And
this is something I personally kind of struggled with.
we ask Ben what he thinks about it all.
I didn't really understand pleading third-degree murder made me guilty of actual murder.
And what was to be his first time speaking publicly about the case, Benjamin Klinger was about to tell us himself.
Thank you for taking my call.